Are you sure you are living your own life? Every decision you make daily, from what you like to eat, the person you love, to the fears you avoid, how many are truly your own choices, or just the result of a series of conditions such as genetics, environment, childhood memories, teachings from adults, society, prejudices, and even your inner pains? We often say, I want this, I hate that, I am this kind of person. But if you peel away each layer of that self, what do you see? Where does that desire come from? When did that hatred form? Does that person truly exist as a fixed entity? Or is it just an illusion repeated in the mind? If there is no self that arises, exists, and controls everything, then what governs all the thoughts, feelings, and actions within us? This is where the teaching of dependent origination comes in, not as a doctrine to memorize, but as a mirror reflecting everything you call I or mine, which are actually a chain of interdependent phenomena, with no beginning or end, and no controlling subject. At that point, the illusion begins to crack. Dependent origination is not a system to worship. It is a very simple insight, so simple that if you try to understand it intellectually, you miss it. The Buddha did not say that all things were created by a supreme being, nor that everything is random and chaotic. He avoided all extremes and simply stated that if this exists, that exists. If this does not exist, that does not exist. Yet this statement immediately undermines all illusions. Nothing arises from a single cause. Nothing exists alone. All phenomena, including your body and mind, operate on an endless web of conditions. A raindrop falls not only because of clouds, but also because of humidity, temperature, pressure, geography, and even evaporation of a distant water drop you have never known. Every breath you take is not just a biological reflex, but the result of millions of years of evolution of cells, lungs, and forests that released oxygen on some morning long ago. If you look closely at yourself, you will see there is no independent self. Your thoughts do not arise by themselves. Your emotions do not come from nowhere. Even habits, pain, preferences, and the idea of your existence are formed from external and internal conditions beyond your control. Dependent origination means nothing can exist without the conditions that support it. What you call self is only a temporary assembly of conditions like a cloud. When the wind changes or the moisture dissipates, the cloud disappears, but no one dies, because in reality, no one was ever born. The truth of dependent origination is also the truth of no self, that nothing has a fixed nature or exists by itself. Thus, there is no mine, no self that owns emotions, no self that controls life, only conditions that arise, operate, and vanish without leaving traces except the quietness of awareness. Realizing this, we stop blaming others, parents, children, society, or ourselves, because all are part of the flow of conditions. No one controls, no one is harmed, no one causes. Without anyone to blame or pity, you enter a realm of clarity without an owner. In dependent origination, the Buddha did not simply outline a linear chain of cause and effect, but pointed directly to how suffering arises in everyone's mind right here, not in some distant life or mysterious reincarnation. Every moment you identify, react, and cling is a link in the chain of suffering's origin. It begins with ignorance, not lack of knowledge, but a blurry state where you do not see the true nature of phenomena. You mistakenly believe happiness comes from outside. Suffering is caused by someone, and there is a separate self to protect, achieve, or prove. This ignorance is the soil for all illusions to sprout. You begin to act, not just outwardly, but through subtle internal structures of calculation, reaction, and clinging to concepts. These repeated reactions form habits and mental patterns from which karma is planted, not by reward or punishment, but as a natural consequence of actions. From this ignorance arises discriminative awareness called consciousness, which is not pure knowing, but divided knowing. I am seeing, I am thinking, I am feeling. As subject and object split, the self begins to form, faint but seemingly real. From here, body and mind start to shape, including emotions, intentions, imagination, and perception. The body is the physical part capable of feeling and reacting. This combination forms a structure called self, with body, mind, feelings, and memories. Because there is a self, there are doors to interact with the world. The six sense base eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind contacting forms, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and ideas. Each moment of seeing, hearing, or thinking is an opportunity for the self to arise again. From contact with sensation arises feeling, which never stays still but brings pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feelings. When feeling arises, you begin to react. These feelings create sensation called Vedana. You feel pleasure and want to keep it, pain and want to avoid it, emptiness and want to fill it. From simple feeling, the mind stirs wanting, not wanting, or confusion about what it wants. From feeling arises attachment, craving not unconditional love, but secret longing and subtle clinging. You want things to go your way, and what you want most is the feeling of control. From craving arises grasping. You not only want, but identify with it. You not only love that person, but call them mine. You not only achieve something, but see it as you. The ego now clings tightly to experience and creates a new layer of self. This grasping leads to the formation of a self or existence. You are no longer just the experiencer, but the betrayed one, the awakened one, the good, the bad, the one who needs recognition. From here, a conditioned existence is created solely to protect that image. Once existence arises, birth occurs, not physical birth, but continuous arising of the ego. Each time you identify with an emotion, a role, a memory, you are reborn as I. Every self born carries its own life cycle and inevitably leads to decay, old age, and death. Every image born in the mind will dissolve, and you suffer not because things disappear, but because you think you disappear. You fear losing yourself, but in truth, it is only a self-created image fading away. This chain from ignorance, action, awareness, division, shaping body and mind, contact, feeling, craving, grasping, becoming, birth, and suffering does not operate once, but repeats endlessly in every breath, thought, and emotion. Each time you do not see the chain, it starts again. Each time you see clearly, it stops by itself without external intervention or breaking the cycle of reincarnation. Thus, the cycle is not somewhere distant, but the habit of continuous self-arising in every living moment. You are not fully awake. People often think of reincarnation as a long cycle of birth, growing, aging, dying, then rebirth in another life. That image is easy to imagine, easy to believe, but also easily misunderstood. The Buddha did not deny cosmic reincarnation, but in deep wisdom pointed directly that reincarnation is happening now as long as you mistake self. Every time you identify with a thought, a new self is born. When emotions sweep you away, another self enters the stage. When anger arises and you say, "I am angry," immediately a self with the form of anger is born. When sadness comes and you say, "I am sad," another self arises. In one day, you can be born and die hundreds of times without realizing it. That is reincarnation in the mind. You don't have to wait until the next life to be reborn. You are constantly reborn into roles, memories, small egos you mistake as yourself, and so you constantly die. Every defeat, rejection, or neglect is a self you have held tightly dissolving. But because you don't see this, you think you are living a single linear life from one point to another. In fact, you have never truly lived a single moment because you are chasing hundreds of imaginary selves, continuously born and fading. Reincarnation is not a myth. It is a subtle psychological process that happens inside you, where lack of clarity causes each feeling, thought, and reaction to be labeled as I, beginning to operate as a separate life. If you pay close enough attention, you will see that no I lasts more than a few seconds. Today, you may be a failure. Tomorrow, a winner. An hour ago, you were kind. Now you are resentful. Everything constantly changes. Yet you think this is a continuous flow of a single individual. Therefore, liberation is not escaping the cycle of birth and death in some future life, but seeing clearly the subtle arising and passing right here in the present moment, no longer being deceived by it. When you realize that nothing truly arises, nothing truly needs to end, and when there is no I to cling to, then there is no one to be born or to die. From that, the cycle of reincarnation naturally ceases, not by effort or craving for liberation, but through simple, calm, and comprehensive insight. Everything is simply happening. No one is born or dies. No one is doing anything. If you are no longer the observer, you will see that the stage itself never existed. Dependent origination not only describes how phenomena arise, but also how they cease. When this exists, that exists. When this ceases, that also ceases. There is no need to defeat the ego, destroy afflictions, or force the mind. Simply perceiving one link with a calm and impartial gaze stops the entire chain of dependent origination. For example, if you can clearly see sensations arising, just observe without judgment, reaction, wanting to hold on, or push away. Attachment cannot arise. Without attachment, there is no grasping. Without grasping, no I is recreated. Every broken link causes the entire chain of suffering to dissolve. Just like loosening one link in a circle of chains, breaks the circle. But this insight cannot come from theory alone. It does not come from books or memory. It arises only from sharp awakening in each moment, from honest observation when you are quiet enough not to react habitually and clear enough not to fall into explanation or comparison. Insight meditation is the path the Buddha walked, not sitting to reach a peaceful state, but sitting to see clearly as it is, to see form and mind operating, to see mind arising and passing, emotions rising and fading, with no one inside controlling these processes. In this seeing, ignorance loses its hold. When ignorance ends, formations end, consciousness ends, until the entire chain of dependent origination is unraveled. Liberation does not come as a miraculous moment or a sudden awakening from a dream. It is like a lamp going out, not because someone blows it out, but because the fuel no longer remains. All suffering in you is the same. It does not need to be destroyed, but simply not fueled by ignorance and identification. When you truly see, letting go is no longer an act but a consequence. No one tries to let go. Everything simply falls away. No one gives up, yet you no longer cling. It is like a person holding a burning rope. When they see the fire, the hand naturally lets go. No morality, no ideals, no effort needed. And there, where all the links of creation cease to be continued, is freedom. Not the freedom to do what you want, but freedom from the I you always wanted. Freedom from the endless cycle of craving and suffering. This freedom belongs to no one, because the liberated person no longer exists. Only clarity, silence, formlessness, and reality as it is remain. The deepest consequence of dependent origination is the insight into no self. When the Buddha saw that all phenomena of body and mind arise from conditions, the idea of an independent self was completely erased. There was no foundation to say, "This is me, this is mine," or "This is myself." We often live as if a self owns the experience, stands behind thoughts, controls emotions, and reacts to the world. But if you look closely, everything happening is the result of conditions. There is no one at the center of this flow. Sensations come from the body's contact with the environment. Thoughts arise due to memories, surroundings, and situations. Emotions surface due to habits accumulated from the past. In this whole process, there is no place to put a permanent I. New self does not mean you disappear or become numb. It simply means seeing clearly there is no fixed entity living this life. What you call I is just the gathering of countless interacting components at the moment. Body, feelings, mind, and phenomena. None of these components have the property of self. When conditions come together, phenomena arise. When conditions dissolve, phenomena vanish. There is no subject being born and no subject dying. Because there is no self, suffering has no one to hold on to it. You may still feel pain, but there is no one to be in pain. You may still experience sadness, but no I embraces the sadness and turns it into a core identity. The greatest suffering lies not in the feeling, but in the mistaken belief, "I am suffering." That phrase is the root of samsara. where the self places itself at the center of every experience. Therefore, when you see dependent origination clearly, there is no need to try to destroy the ego or force letting go. Just see honestly, without judgment, that everything arises and ceases conditionally. No one is in it. No thing in it is I. When that insight is stable, even with sensations, thoughts, or disturbances, you are no longer deceived into thinking someone is experiencing them. Seeing no self does not mean becoming empty or careless. It is returning to the natural state of presence where awareness is unbound, where phenomena come and go without leaving traces, where life flows without a controller. This is not a special state, but reality always present, merely obscured by the illusion of self. When there is no one to suffer, suffering ceases to be a problem. It becomes just part of the flow of conditions, like rain falling and stopping. No one endures it. No one fights it. When suffering is truly seen this way, liberation does not come from eliminating suffering, but from no longer having anyone who suffers. At that point, awakening wisdom blossoms not for any goal or attainment, but because all conditions creating the self cease to be nourished. No one perceives dependent origination, yet it continues to operate. This is the deepest paradox of the path. The moment you say, "I see," that seeing is no longer pure because the self has re-entered as a witness, distorting reality. True seeing belongs to no one. There is no seer, no owner of experience. Dependent origination does not need anyone's gaze to occur. It manifests in every movement of mind and body, every rising and passing feeling. You may think you are living this life, but knowledge of dependent origination is not intellectual. It is not in words, analysis, or memorizing 12 links. It only reveals itself when you let go of all efforts to understand and quietly see life operating with no operator. Each time a link in the chain of reactions is silently seen without interference, an illusion of self cracks. You do not need a great awakening or to seek a moment of enlightenment. Just recognizing each cycle spontaneously arises and passes, no one directing, no one bearing the dissolution, is enough. It makes no sound, brings no sense of victory, no liberation ceremony. It is so light, you think nothing happened, but precisely that nothingness without an owner is the deepest nature of freedom. We do not need to become enlightened, sharpen the mind, or reach any special state. We only need to see clearly that all efforts to become something are built on a self that never existed. When you see this, you no longer need to awaken, because there is no one confused. No need to attain enlightenment, because no one is lost. No need to eliminate suffering, because no one suffers. Only a flowing life remains, unresisted, unforced, with peace born not from anyone. Dependent origination is not a doctrine to believe or a dogma to debate. It is a mirror reflecting the so-called self, showing there never was a self there. Everything just happens according to conditions. And when conditions are no longer nourished, the self dissolves like clouds, blown away by the wind. Liberation is not ahead, not behind, not effort, not outside life. It is right here, in clear silence, where you see that nothing, needs to be done. No one needs to be saved. No path must be walked. Only clarity remains. No one guarding, no one losing. If anything remains after all is done, it is not knowledge, but a state unbound by knowledge. Wisdom without a name, presence without center, a view not standing anywhere. Thank you for listening, not as a learner, but as awareness reflecting on itself. See you in the simplest moments where dependent origination still operates, and you are no longer driven by it.